And then you can let Kim know direct
I will.
on the museum thing.
I did not see that.
I'd like to call the Tuesday, March 3rd meeting of the St. Joseph County Board of Commissioners to order. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for a prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we come today to bow our heads and open this meeting in prayer. We ask that you continue to bless us and our time together today. Please make sure we follow your will and grasp those things that you want us to understand. May our hearts always be ready to respond to you and your wisdom. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, first order of business, opening and reading of bids. We'll note there are none. We'll move on to reports and requests. First, Board of Commissioners. First item is the accounts payable docket. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, Employee of the Month. Yes.
Oh, Bree.
Good morning, Bree Roberts with County Procurement. Office is here on the 7th floor of this building. I am very pleased to announce this month's Employee of the Month. Ryan has proved himself as an asset to our team at every stage and very early on. He's dependable, honest, hardworking, and motivated. Beyond that, he's an impressive communicator who always is trying to find ways to support and aid our department, as well as other county staff he encounters. Ryan interfaces with all county departments as our procurement clerk, and I continue to hear great things about those interactions. Along with his undeniable technical talent, Ryan has been a joy to work with. He fosters positive discussions in the workplace and is a true team player. Ryan is always willing to give a helping hand to those in need and will go above and beyond to see a project through to completion. I am very honored to present Ryan Rotes as January 2020 Employee of the Month.
Well, I just want to say that we are pleased with that as well, too. Thank you so much for doing that. And so, Ryan, come up here. Here's your lovely form. You're welcome. Thank you. And here is your materials in there. Okay. All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Why don't we slide down and get a picture?
Good job, Ryan.
Me too? All right.
Okay. Very nice.
All right, next, we have an agreement with Barnes & Thornburg LLP.
Similar to other agreements we've entered into to assist county in having revenue submitted to it in a way that we can make sure we're directing how it's being used. We've set up nonprofits to assist emergency management. I think we've done that with Portage Manor 2 in the past. This would allow the health department to receive donations in terms of a nonprofit that they could direct how the money is being spent. This would engage Barnes & Thornburg to undertake that work. The agreement's pretty self-explanatory. I'm happy to answer any questions, but these agreements have seemingly been beneficial to the county.
This was brought forward by the health department.
It is. Dr. Foster requested
Yep.
and the board. They'd like to see this happen.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I think the JJC also has Friends of the JJC in our parks departments. it helps streamline donations to a certain department and cuts through a lot of times, red tape of government regarding ownership and the application of said assets. So it's a good thing.
Any other questions or comments? Is it-
I understand, what I understand of the agreement with Barnes and Thornburn is going to help make the health department better and help more with our county, so citizens, so that will be good. So, yeah.
There are no more questions or comments. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the agreements with Barnes and Thornburn.
Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next up, we have the auditor request approval of a Nyhart contract. Mr. Hammond.
Good morning, Mike Hammond, St. Joe County Auditor with offices on the second floor. Last summer, during our budget negotiations with the county council, several council members asked the auditor's office about the police pension and the sustainability of the police pension. John and I weren't able to answer that question. We could only tell them, here's what we've spent in the past, here's what we're spending now. We budgeted about $2.9 million for the police pension for 2020, and it has gone up every year, which is concerning to them, the council that is, and should be concerning to all of us. For instance, in 2009, the St. Joe County contribution to the pension was $1.2 million, so it continues to go up. So they asked John and I to try to come up with an analysis as to how where's it going to be in the future, and what sort of things that the council and the pension board could do to rein in costs and try to make it sustainable for future St. Joseph County police employees. Well, that's beyond our abilities here, so we are reaching out to a company that does that sort of thing called Nyhart, and that's the contract in front of you. They are going to do sort of an overview of here's what your costs are, here's where we think we're going in the future, and here are some options for the decision makers. That is to say, you guys, pension board, and the county council. So John and I are asking approval of this contract so that Nyhart can do a deep dive into where we are on the pension to make it sustainable in the future.
You know, Nyhart is who the county has used for at least a decade, back to the BRG days of, they kind of offset and help us look at our health care and what those expenses should be, and they're also done some things from a retiree benefit as well. So we've had a long-standing relationship with Nyhart. Any questions or comments? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. Mike, the cost that, what did you say, 1.9 million or 2.9 million?
This year we budgeted $2.9 million for the
And was
pension.
that based on actual cost or the state recommended a figure?
Well, that's what, to make it sustainable, that's what we're gonna need to put in, and it'll go up. So,
But that's sort of by the state or actual cost?
No.
Actual cost. It's not a state-run program. So each county's cost will be different.
I've not been a big fan, as most of everyone knows, of Nyhart and some of their studies, when they generally seem to go after retirees. This one is very specific to their pension fund.
yeah,
Mr. Murphy, I've heard there's been productive meetings. Would you say there's been productive meetings and the sheriff supports it?
I think we've got a representative of the Sheriff's Department here, and Mr. Noonan, will you come on up? He can probably address that better. John and I are kind of like the CDC,
Right. And
We're going to tell you, here's the problem with coronavirus, but then you guys decide. So we've tried to bring together the commissioners, the council, and the police to say, here we think is a problem. And then we've sort of stepped away. So I know that there are meetings between the Sheriff's Department and certain council members, and I believe Commissioner Fleming. But I'll let Major Noonan speak to that.
Steve Noonan, Executive Officer for St. Joe County Sheriff William Redmond. We are meeting on March 12th with the commissioners for the pension, which is the merit board, and to decide on going forward what we're going to do. Obviously, Nyhard is an outside expert. I don't think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hammond, I don't believe that they're, at this point, looking to be the investor. They're just as an advisor. So obviously, we would welcome that.
Okay, and you're meeting March 12th with the merit board?
Right, as in the form of the pension board. They kind of serve a dual role.
Now, did you see the second paragraph of this contract?
Myself, no, I have not.
Okay.
What's the issue? What do you got in the second?
Well, it mentions that they're not a law firm. I'll just read it. Nyhard is not a law firm or a public accounting firm and does not provide legal or tax advice. Therefore, Nyhard recommends the plan sponsor's legal counsel review any documents it prepares. Further, plan sponsor should consult with an attorney experienced in employee benefit plan matters regarding any questions or concerns that plan sponsor may have relative to the plan's qualifications, including but not limited to the legality of any planned design changes implemented pursuant to the services provided pursuant to this agreement, coverage of employees, and any other issue of legal nature.
That'd be Pete Augustino, yeah. So
Okay,
they
so
would,
has Pete been involved in this?
Yes.
Officer Noonan?
yeah.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, I've not been a big fan of Nyhardt's general retirement-y issues, but this one is narrow in scope, and I've heard there have been productive meetings. And having faith in the sheriff, I will support it.
And I just want to say, too, it's a way that, as we've talked about, the way that we could hopefully help save the county some money in the future, because we've been losing money on the pensions. So we want to make sure we're doing it the right way, making sure that our retirees are being filled properly, and all that kind of stuff.
But just so you know, this doesn't address the investment aspect of it, and that's what, all this does is to say, here's what you've been spending. If you do nothing, the cost will be X in 10 years, I think about $6 million. And here are some things, here are some recommendations that the decision makers can take as long as they're in line with the will of the commissioners and the council, the merit board, the pension board, and it's legal, to Commissioner Thomas's point. So all they're doing, they're just laying out information to you so you can make intelligent decisions.
Right, and I think that's good to have
Yep.
the information.
And I think the honorable auditor has been clear that it is just the issue of the fund,
Well,
not the
yeah.
investing, and its
No,
actual
it's not
cost.
that. That's a separate thing that I
Right.
know that some council members and commissioners and the pension board and the sheriff, they're working on that. That's a separate issue that they're dealing with.
Right,
This has nothing to do with that.
right.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I thank for you for that. I know nationally, like CBS Evening News, NBC Nightly News, some other news channels, nationwide, it's sometimes a problem of boards investing funds, although they have no experience investing funds, and sometimes lose the funds.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
That's happened.
So,
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the contract with Nyhard Company.
Second.
We have a motion to second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, County Police request approval bid award for police vehicles.
Steve Noonan again, Executive Officer for the Sheriff Office, 401 West Sample. At this time, we'd like to, out of 2020 budgeted money, purchase 13 vehicles. One vehicle being a 2020 GMC Yukon XL. It has a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $55,050. With the bid that was received from Gurley Leap being the lowest, it would be $43,714. This is used for transportation of inmates around the state to various state prisons, county jails, places that the Transportation Division has to go. The remaining 12 vehicles would be 2020 Ford Police Hybrid Utility Interceptors. That would be at a cost of $43,093 each for a total of $517,116. That leaves a shortage of $1,030, which we propose would come from the VIN check fund that's collected when we do VIN checks.
Is our transport vehicle here? approved that last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't think that's part of this.
Officer, I think 2 weeks ago, we approved the transport vehicle, and it's all that currently is before us is the 12 vehicle.
Okay, that may be, I'm filling in for Major Chandler, who's out
Right.
of town.
The
So
major usually does handle this.
I think he may have just made reference to that because it is coming out of the same budgeted money.
Okay.
So the request would be then for the $517,116.
And
Yeah, that's
and
what I thought.
knowing that there isn't a deadline on these issues, the major's always keeping us aware. Maybe we could, Counselor, if it's all right, we could approve the request of 12, and if we have not already approved the transport vehicle, then it's also approved?
I think that's fine. I think that you have approved the transport vehicle 2 meetings ago. It came as a standalone item, is my recollection. So I
Right.
think,
Remember that too,
I think
okay.
what you want to do is fine.
Was the cost, how much it was gonna cost, right?
Yeah, we approved it though,
Yeah.
purchase.
Yeah, we approved it, well,
It was
at least the
Jordan.
bid, we approved the bid, because there was
And the
only one.
purchase, I think, yeah.
I don't think we did the purchase at that time, because he didn't know exactly, he had it submitted, is what I thought
Or
this
the
was.
trade-in value?
Yeah, but anyway,
And there, I did fail to mention that, there is a 9,800 in trade-in
On the 12 vehicles,
of 9 vehicles. We're trading in 9.
anyway, we
trading in
approved
9, but you're gonna buy 12 plus one,
Right.
one what?
One transportation
And
vehicle.
what's the
if
value
that
of the
was not
transport
previously
vehicle?
approved.
What's the
And
transport vehicle cost?
$43,714.
And what was there, like a discount of like
Uh,
$1,300, $1,700?
$11,366 from the MSRP.
So Commissioner Fleming thought maybe we only accepted the bid, we didn't actually award it. I remember us discussing it. We could go and accept all of it, we'll have the amendment like I first proposed.
Approve it,
the
subject
12,
to-
and approve the second, the transport, subject to it not already being approved.
Okay, that's fine.
second that. Is that all right?
It is
Yeah.
all right. That accomplishes everything and gets the sheriff what he needs.
Okay.
Amen, and the
Good job.
timeline. And Marie, you can check on that and take care of that, please.
So we have a motion, a second. If there are no more questions or comments, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you for all you do, thank you.
Next up, Juvenile Justice Center request approval to apply for a VOCA grant.
Good morning. Brenda Matthews-Skavich, Executive Director of CASA Program of St. Joseph County, located at the Juvenile Justice Center, 1000 South Michigan Street. I'm here requesting approval to apply for a Victims of Crime Act grant. It is for cycle 2020 to 2022. And many of you may remember I came to you last year, probably about this time, to apply for the same grant. It was for a one-year cycle, though. We were successful in applying for that grant. We are currently implementing that grant. It enabled us to hire 3 staff members. And this would be a continuation of that grant. I have no idea at this moment whether we will ask for additional staff than the 3 that are in the current grant, but I'll assess that once I get into it. It is a reimbursement grant, and we use our 1213 fund. Mr. John Murphy can clarify any questions you might have pertaining to that, but we use our 1213 fund to pay out those initial benefits and salary to the staff paid via VOCA, and then the county is reimbursed, or our program is reimbursed. There is no additional cost to the county whatsoever for this particular grant. It is a necessity to our program. We served over 560 children last year. Couldn't have done that without this grant, so.
Any questions or comments? Mr.
Yes.
Thomas?
Isn't there also a waiting line of children who need CASA
That is,
volunteers?
that is correct. We have right now, well, we ended 2019 with 274 children on our wait list, despite having served over 560. That 274 is the lowest our wait list has been in years. With the additional staff that the county added and the additional grants that I've wrote, we are set to serve all children on our wait list by the end of 2020. Judge Jason Chikowitz has been very supportive of our program and enabled us to get to this point, and so a lot of thanks goes to him for this.
Super, that's a phenomenal turnaround, because I think before the number was as high as 400 or 500 children.
There were quite a few, yes, on our wait list. We just
Almost
didn't.
double the number you were serving.
Yeah, I mean, we had to have staff there to be able to support the volunteers. We couldn't continue to take on more children without additional staff to supervise volunteers.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and I just, again, want to say that I'm glad that, unfortunately, we have so many children that need help, but I'm glad that we're able to help them.
Yeah.
So anything we need to do to make sure that we can help all these children, because I love children, I'm glad that we're able to help them. So I would support this grant so that we can, again, help the children.
Okay.
Certainly positive news articles or, media notices that you need volunteers. I know sometimes occasionally you get funding for that TV commercial,
We are currently in an advertising cycle right now, yes. So, we've found that over the years, you need repetitive information out there about the need. Volunteers usually hear those messages for several years before they actually come to us and go through the training. We're currently in a training cycle right now. We have another one set to start April. We're training 4 times a year, 8 months out of the year, and I'm not sure what more we can be doing. We're doing our best at this
My
point.
thanks and compliments to you, your staff, and the Honorable Judge Schikowitz for getting this backlog down to 0.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions or comments, is there a motion?
Motion to approve this request to apply for the VOCA grant.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Motion
Thank
passes.
you.
Thank you. Next, the Penn Township Assessor requests approval to advertise for information technology services.
Good morning. I'm Julie Modlin, Chief Deputy Penn Township Assessors. Mike Castellan, the assessor, apologizes for not being here today. He is ill. So bear with me. We are submitting a bid to collect, we are putting a bid for data collection services. Now, I know that in our the agenda it says informational technology services and software. There is no software involved, so just wanted to make that clear. And what this would be a vendor that would come in and help with assessing commercial properties in Penn Township, commercial and industrial. And then they would provide training for the township for all staff members. And I think that we would benefit from this and that we would have the most accurate assessments for commercial and
we'll note
industrial
this has been
properties.
approved for the 2020
Yes,
budget
and
prior,
this is-
so this is just
right.
kind of fulfilling that. Okay. Any questions or comments?
I think also we've, in the past, have allowed the trustee to, or the assessor rather, to hire some outside consultants for helping assess. It's almost, might even be a renewal of previous efforts, but you're taking new bids is what the goal right today is.
Right, right,
So this is really a bid request, right?
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions or comments, is there a motion?
Motion to approve this bid request.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Portage Manor requests approval to apply for 2 grants with Transpo.
Good morning, Robin Challenor, Administrator at Portage Manor, 3016 Portage Avenue, South Bend, Indiana, 46628. And so I put a cover letter, and on here I asked for your apologies. This is my first time applying for grants, and so I didn't realize that I needed signatures, and so I was tracking Andy down at like the 11th hour to get those signatures, and I appreciate your help in getting that done. And also Pete was very helpful in getting signatures done on the day that they were due. So I appreciate your help in that. So there are 2 grants that Zachary Nelson brought to me from Transpo. So the FTA, or the Federal Transportation Authority, has allocated funds for them to distribute for seniors and adults with disabilities, which is the people we serve. So it's a great opportunity for us, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity to apply. So one is for a operation funding grant, and that's the one, Transpo has never done this this grant before, and it is a 2-year cycle. It's for 2020 through 2022. And so I think there's like $800,000 to help with operation costs, including staffing. And so, again, being new, I put some things on paper, and we'll see what it'll look like. If we get awarded the grant, it could definitely absorb some of our costs for staffing. We're already doing these services. It would just really help us to offset those costs. We do ensure that residents get to their appointments and get to community events, and it usually is just a pull on our regular staff. So this would really just give us a little wiggle room and be able to provide a better service for them. The capital, and that is a 50-50 matching grant. So we already have in our budget for 2020 for staffing. I would have to work with the auditor's office on how to create those line items because I've never, again, done these grants. And then the second grant that I applied for, or asking for approval, is for a capital funding, which is an 80-20 match. So they would provide 80% of the funding in Portage Manor, which we had already, again, in 2020 allocated, I think, $60,000 in vehicles and had hoped to get grant funding because $60,000 wouldn't go very far in the vehicle purchases that we need. But this would allow us to get a low-floored minivan. We have a lot of residents who have difficulty getting up and down into our vans. And then also a 12 to 14 passenger larger van. And we would be like $17,000 out of our pocket. And then the rest, like $79,000 or whatever, and some change would be covered under the grant funds. And so that's what I'm here asking for today.
And actually, we've already applied for these grants. This is just kind of doing the work that, because of time constraints, we weren't able to wait until our next meetings. This is just kind of taking that action. Any questions or comments?
Robin, please don't apologize. You do very vital work and help take care of very vulnerable people that otherwise might be homeless or abused in many other ways. How many beds do you operating now?
We have 144 licensed bed. We currently have 132, I believe, and we're getting referrals again this morning. There's a lot of needs, and so we serve who we can. Yeah.
And your predecessor had the job for several decades, so
yeah,
she knew everything there was to know. And sometimes when our valuable, dedicated county employees retire, sometimes that inherent knowledge goes with them, and they can't teach everybody
shoes
everything.
To fill, absolutely, yeah.
But I think most people would agree you've done a wonderful job. Thank you with working with historic preservation and the buildings and the route to the cemetery and the highway department, engineering. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say too, Robin, I think you're doing a fabulous job with Portage Manor, and I appreciate all the work that you do. So, thank you.
No more questions or comments. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve this request to apply for, actually it's already been applied for, so just approving for the grants, is that what we're doing?
Sure.
Okay, approve the grants request.
Plural.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Robin. All right, next up, from procurement, request approval of InFocus contract for ERP project backfill and aid.
The 200K on backfill, likely. Okay, I'll introduce it. All right, good morning again. Mike Hammond, St. Joe County Auditor with offices on the second floor, and I've got with me the ERP team. Back in the summertime, when the county council decided to go with the Tyler company for the ERP system, the cost was about $2.1 million. Part of the cost had to do with making sure that we could implement this thing. We had enough employees to cover the implementation of it. To that end, the county council budgeted $40,000 for potential use of an InFocus fellow, and about $230,000 for 4 full-time employees for backfill. We're starting the process now. Tyler's going to be here in a couple of weeks, so we're going to be hitting the ground running here with our team. We're not really sure if we're going to use all that money. Maybe we will use it. But right now, at this juncture, we think we can go in with a little bit lighter footprint. The money is there in case we need it. So the request before you is to approve an N-Focus contract for 2 fellows, one for $40,000, which we foresaw that would help Scott Seneff in IT, and he can explain to what his needs are there. And then another fellow who can help Bree Roberts in procurement and John Butler to help implement this thing. So that's what's before you. That's the overall concept from 30,000 feet. So the council saw this and knew that we needed a budget for it, and now is the time to pull the trigger to start bringing these people in because we're starting to move on this project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bree and Scott and John, and they can fill in some details and answer your specific questions. Thank you.
Bree Roberts, County Procurement Offices on the 7th floor of this building. So just to speak to my piece, myself personally, I'm slated for about 3 FTEs, including my procurement position here with the county. So again, just trying to make sure that we backfill our resources so that we have the most optimal plan for success. That's the hope here. And essentially, I just need somebody who's bright, willing to learn, and willing to kind of take on tasks with me as they come, as far as ERP project management and ongoing project tasks and deliverables. So mine is kind of more generalized, but again, we had conversations with outsourcing, as far as outsourcing a project manager, which ended up being very costly. So I'm just basically trying to fill these shoes with the resources we have available.
Scott Seneff, Director of Information Technology, Auditor's Office, 2nd floor. The component for information technology in this proposal here would be real helpful for us. We've started already, and in 2 weeks I've logged 30 hours working on the infrastructure needed so that we can connect to the software as a service bank of servers in Maine and Texas. So there are a couple of different areas in information technology on a project of this size. One of them is that kind of hardcore networking and security-driven work. And then there is a whole nother IT side that is IT related, yet could be done by someone with a background in computer sciences, such as an N-Focus fellow, that could deal with some of the minutia involving setting up security, training, system configuration, and particularly in data conversion. In order to get all of our older data into the new system, you have to convert it, and doing that is no small feat. And so I'm looking forward to maybe having some help with that. We still have to maintain a very brisk and busy IT department, and we've already got 5 or 6 projects of our own for 2020. So I would hope you'd consider that, and I think this is a good move.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to mention was that the original appropriation came out of the rainy day fund last year. And that was kind of as a safeguard. We weren't really sure where our revenues would land. So it looks like we're in solid enough shape that we can reimburse the rainy day fund. So the council has asked John and myself to make that happen. So this $2.1 million appropriation that came out of the rainy day fund, that will go back into the rainy day fund. I thought that was important to pass along to you guys.
I'll also note that this, going the route from an N-Focus standpoint, saves a minimum of $100,000 in salary if we were going to go out and hire individuals to come in as full-time employees to do this work.
That is true.
So, I mean, this is an incredible potential cost savings for this truly mission-critical project that we're about to embark on. So I appreciate you guys always looking for ways that we can do things more economically than not. So, any questions or comments? Thomas?
I know the staff has worked hard as directed, but I've never been a fan of the ERP project, and I'm still not going to be. Thank you.
Understood.
I'll be brief.
If there are no more questions or comments, is there a motion?
A motion to approve the N-Focus contract for the ERP project.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-1.
Thank
All right, next, thank you all. Next, infrastructure planning and growth. Request approval of change order number 2, BLDG 042019 SA, construction and renovation of offices, Phase 1 Central Highway Garage.
Good morning, Frank Fortier with Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth with offices on the 4th, 7th, and 11th floor of this building. Before you is change order number 2 for the renovation of the former central garage, the new sheriff's post out on Lathrop. The amount for this change order is $28,694. Combined with the first change order is a total of $113,432 would be what the contract would be increasing. The vast majority of this has to do with some changes in life safety, having to make sure that the bulkhead between the first and second floors was in fact fire rated, and in the connections to the walls themselves, and a little bit with a change we had to make on the epoxy floor to accommodate the additional salt content of the concrete.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Thomas?
Frank, our paperwork, at least the one I have, it says that this is a change order number 2 is an increase of $113,432. But I think you're saying that that's an increase of change order 1 and 2?
Correct. So if you look at the second page, you can see in the breakdown that change order 1 was $84,738. This change order is $28,694.
So your pages, when you wrote 113 in your cover page for change order 2, you really wanted the number 28,694. That number 2's change order.
Yes. That reflects the total amount to date of change orders, so I do apologize if there was confusion.
Okay.
But yes, this change order is just $28,694.
Well, again, it's no secret that I've not been a fan of this project. I don't think it's fair to the county police staff or the citizens to rehab that building in such a way. It'd been better and smarter to build a whole new facility for the county police that could have expanded with other county departments. The first change order listed various items, all looped into one, which I thought was odd. When I went through this paperwork, I find probably 6 different sets of items relating to fence. You mentioned fire rating and salt content of concrete. I would think things like that, again, would be included in the original design by the architects. But in this change order, I find fencing, flooring, water fountain additions, steps, landings, tile work. Again, all things I think that should have been included in an original appraisal or an estimate by a competent architect. And then I also note that from Zilkowski Construction, it says there's going to be additional supervisory costs. So I imagine that's going to come in a later change order. And then it also mentions that they're changing the substantial completion date, extending this, that the part of this also is to allow another 64 days for completion. So we're going to pay supervisory costs for 64 days or some other cost? Usually if somebody doesn't complete a project on time, I think they get penalized. But instead, we're the buyer getting penalized, it seems.
I'll jump in, answer a couple of those questions. Number one, a lot of these things were changed from the original specs. So the fencing, for example, was because the county and the police wanted a different fencing than what was proposed. So some of these things are as a result of changes being requested by the sheriff department or other things that have gone through. That's why some of these things have changed. I think part of also the reason that the projects have been delayed is as at request of the sheriff department, there are some things they would like to add or modify or improve than what was originally proposed. So that's what's causing some of the delays in this, because we want to make sure while we're doing this, we're going to try and do it right the first time and get as many issues addressed as we can.
And and therefore it seems that the sheriff's department would have been in the initial design from day one, and then none of these delays and problems would have happened.
And they were in the design from day one.
Well, then it would seem none of these problems would have occurred.
You can take that up with the sheriff department then.
There was also an election of a new sheriff, so I will say that part of the designs were under the old sheriff, and then when the new sheriff came in and some of his appointees wanted to make a couple changes as well to the designs.
Thank you, Frank. still just feel this is wasted money. The county police and the taxpayers deserve probably a new structure instead of retrofitting that building.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve this change order number 2 for the Central Highway Garage area.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Frank, if you could do me a favor, because we've had, this is on multiple meetings, we've had, well, it's, that the wise choice would have been to new construction and do that. If you could have them generate a back of the napkin what new construction would cost, because typically speaking, rehabbing existing construction is a more cost-effective measure than it is building new. But if you could please give us that back of the napkin. I would
Absolutely, I'll
appreciate
email
that.
them this
Thank
afternoon.
you.
Sure, Frank, and while you're at it, would you please, I'm sorry,
Moving on to
Madam-
old,
I was just going to say, but I know that we were trying to help with the sheriff's department to coordinate everything, and they were approving, oh, this would be great, let's all get together and make things better. So we were trying to help them at that time.
Yeah, that building had a very expensive, fully drive-through, wet, dry area for tractor trailers to pull into.
Correct.
With a very strong foundation, drainage, bay doors on both sides. And for all that expense the county paid to build that, to then turn it into office, is just a huge waste of money and a huge waste of that initial asset and investment.
noted. All right. There's been a question there. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business. Seeing none.
Glad we
Public
are.
comments. Are there any public comments? Please, you have 3 minutes after stating your name and address to address the Board of Commissioners.
Good morning, Deborah Durrell, 21677 Aughton Road, South Bend, 46628. Firstly, I would like to offer my congratulations to Mr. Castelny for his fine performance as Fred Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I was surprised to see you have all of those skills. And secondly, I would like to have my name removed from the IEC Steering Committee online. And also, I would like to have my name put forward to fill the opening on the IEC Executive Steering Committee, as it would help balance the decisions made there. I am self-employed, so I can change my schedule to accommodate the many workday meetings that prevent members of the public from attending, and I will be glad to forward my resume for consideration. I realize that I may often be outnumbered, but that would fall in line with a long St. Joe County tradition of outvoting the dissenting voice. And I believe that an Open Space and Agricultural Alliance member as a voice on the steering committee would help harmonize and ensure the authentic and transparent process of the IEC going forward, and ensure that we continue to have beautiful days in the St. Joe County neighborhood.
I'd like to note that the entirety of the steering committee, that portion was taken down from, so that was, and the original iteration, I believe, of the steering committee was not called steering committee members, they were called stakeholders. So that was an error that has since been removed. So I appreciate your group pointing that out. And yes, the last few days have indeed been beautiful here in St. Joseph County. Next up.
My name's Jack Daly. I live at 217 West Michigan Street, New Carlisle. I didn't want to delay responding to the area management plan that's been released. Given the arbitrary April deadline that's supposedly put in place for engagement with the community, Mr. Chaliol and that proposal, which he speaks as if it's already been approved, which I understood that although we are being subjected to the death by 1,000 financial cuts, there is some final approvals that the county council will weigh in on, I expect, somewhere along the line, unless you all are just working in tandem. So I want to stop you with a couple of I want to give you a couple of quotes. Give me my 3 minutes, and then I'll answer your questions. One is that you cannot solve a problem and contribute to it at the same time. So stop. Stop your spending. Stop your progressing on something that you have still not had publicly promoted. There's still people who don't understand what you're doing out there, and despite your protestations that you've engaged our community, that's BS. Start doing it rather than talking about it. You need to dump this. This living document is dead on arrival. Throw it out, glean what you can out of it, and start all over with a true participation of the people, which is not happening right now. Can I answer a question for you?
I just think we always work in tandem.
No. I sat across from you at a table where you assured me that you were not actively seeking property, and at the same time, you were offering people beyond the assessed value, and you were actively seeking things. You need to build trust, because there is none.
That is categorically false.
Well, in your mind.
No, and that's, in my mind, you're correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
In my mind too, but...
Sure.
My name is Jennifer Betts. I live at 23150 Roosevelt Road, Green Township. I am here today because of the actions of one of your employees in the County Economic Development Office and the consultants they have hired. I recognize that the steering committee list has been changed, but for almost 2 weeks, I was listed as a steering committee member of the IEC Area Management Plan, as were 5 other members of OSA and OSA itself. I don't know if you have ever had your name misused in such a manner. I don't know if you have ever been misrepresented in such a manner, but imagine my horror when I saw my name included in the plan that I have opposed for 2 years. I have spoken about my opposition in this very room. The County Economic Development Office besmirched my name, and I will not be silent in the face of such callousness. Whether this was incompetence or a sick joke, I don't know, but Mr. Castelny, your comments in the South Bend Tribune did not help. Let me read them to you. I believe OSA folks had a great deal of input in regard to the IEC plan, Castelny said. Was it formal input? I don't know, but they had input. You know very well, Commissioner Castelny, that the very last community meeting on the IEC was held in June of 2018. You know that the meetings we have gone to, that hundreds of people have gone to voice their opposition, have only occurred in regularly scheduled meetings of elected officials, not meetings about the IEC. You know tax dollars have been spent on an ad campaign because of the immense opposition to the Indiana Enterprise Center, and you now have an employee circumventing democracy by saying the only vote he needs on this is the Redevelopment Commission, which is appointed by people, by you, the majority members. So I just want to publicly say that if there has been any trust, it has been completely lost. And I am not alone, and we will be fighting this tooth and nail every step of the way.
So I will say that on 2 occasions, back in late 2019, I had meetings with different, in fact, one of the meetings that Mr. Daly just accused me of lying to him at was one of the very meetings that we had.
Those were not public meetings.
Those were meetings that we had with...
that you invited the OSA group into. That is not a authentic, participatory, community, transparent process.
Let him speak and tell you the truth.
Commissioner Fleming, I actually know the truth because I've been living this for 2 years. I don't get paid for this. I'm a citizen. I'm a community member. I take my time out of my day because I care about this community, and you all supposedly care about the community too. So I don't know how we've gotten to this point.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning. Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. I was so pleased to hear this quote just now. We need to do everything we can to help our children. I'm all for helping our children. I'm so pleased to hear that, Commissioner Fleming.
Thank you.
I would hope we could agree that following that line of reasoning, I'm sure we can all agree that the children of New Carlisle and Olive Township and St. Joseph County are best served by being given the opportunity to grow up in a community where the food is non-genetically modified, produced and grown locally on our fertile farmland, particularly in northwest St. Joseph County. Those foods need to be supported by an unpolluted aquifer without the pollution of industrial and commercial growth. These children, many of them the children of farmers, are best suited for carrying on the real tradition of Northwest St. Joseph County, not Studebaker, the real tradition of Northwest St. Joseph County, in place many cases since the Civil War. Some of the commingling of non-farming interest has coexisted with us out there, and we get along quite nicely with it. We don't need the massive overtake of our life out there. The tradition is farming. Anyways, we've existed successfully with that kind of growth out there. We can't have the overgrowth. Commissioner Fleming, I'm pleased to hear that you support the future of our children. I hope you can agree that our children need to eat healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Kim.
Kim Karkowitz, Human Resource Director, St. Joseph County, the 7th floor of this building. I was asked by the Health Department to provide information to the St. Joseph County employees regarding the new information that they've received regarding the COVID-19. So I have made copies for the pass out that they wanted to have there by the agendas. Members of the public can please take those also. With increased COVID-19 activity in the U.S., we wanted to ensure that we share credible information on how to protect yourselves and your family. We currently have no confirmed cases in our county, and local risk of infection is currently low. However, it's best to be prepared. So please take one of these, members of the public, employees. We also have on the Health Department's website, they have updates going, so please reach out to their website and take a look at that information, make sure we all stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's true.
Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. Just to comment on some of the things heard and some things not heard. Mr. Rowe congratulated you on playing Mr. Rogers. I didn't see it. I'm sure it was good. I think I saw part of your Baby Shark
On Daddy Shark, yes.
on television. So today's Tribune, one of the Voice of the People, I think it was, had a really good quote by Voltaire, and it talked about the abuses of government. I wish I had memorized it. I'll probably memorize it by the end of the day, and I hope everybody takes a look at it. And Ms. Beck, even though you and I may not, and others may not agree with Mr. Castelny, as you read, he has the right to believe. He said he believes, so he has the right to believe what he wants to believe. But I appreciate your passion, and I'm all for telling somebody when they're wrong, but his beliefs are his beliefs. Was people's names wrongly advertised as steering committee members? Apparently so. You're welcome to file a class action lawsuit against the redevelopment commissioner of the county maybe for doing that, besmirching your name, especially when you're so well known as opponents of this program, and the anger and feelings it obviously stirs up in you. If my name was, I haven't read the whole report yet, if my name was proper, and I will though, if my name was improperly used, add that to the class action suit. Let's see, what else? The issue of an article that was in the news recently about possibly that we did or did not receive some grant funding for the bridge in New Carlisle. And I think it was like $4.5 million. And it was talked about how this may aid the IEC project. Well, one, if the bridge does get fixed, I think that if we receive that grant, we have to appropriate funding for it. I think there's some kind of match. I could be wrong. It will certainly close the intersection for a while, which I'm sure the residents of New Carlisle will not be happy with for all the problems it suffered in the past. And although New Carlisle and the Open Spaces Alliance has been very vocal, one group that's been quiet for the last few months is the Ardmore Trail people. Well, if this bridge is repaired and upgraded to allow heavier freight, then people are probably going to say, well, although it was set for the IEC, now we can afford to send heavier freight to the airport west side entrance, so let's proceed with that project to kick all the people of Ardmore out of their neighborhoods and bring up that fiasco all over again, which I certainly wouldn't want to happen, and all them residents would not want to happen, and I want to see that money wasted. On the issue that I think Mr. Shalio was quoted in the paper, or possibly quoted, that he feels the redevelopment commission is the final say-so. Generally, anything they do is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, who finalize the action for clarification purposes. If they do bonding, then that takes county council action as well. Lastly, we're in Lent. St. Edwards has a fish fry this Friday. I think Corpus Christi has one. Maybe Holy Family. So. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. And
just one comment related to the potential South Shore Station relocation. The current plan is that if, in the event that any modifications would be made, that the Ardmore area would not be included in a new train route. So that was, that's been all the work being done in the last few months anyway, if not the last year, that the Ardmore piece would be moved back to the original orientation, if it even happens. So just for clarification.
If there was going to be an access to the west side of the airport, then it would be on the west side of Mayflower Road?
I believe so. Yeah, that's still under
which is off of Ardmore Trail, runs through both.
It's still being looked at, but the majority, if not all, of the entirety of the Ardmore neighborhood would be not included.
It's good to hear this. So instead of removing all them people from their homes, it'll be these people from their homes, this side of Mayflower Road.
I don't think there are like 4 homeowners that are in the route that's being proposed.
It'd be nice to see.
If it happens.
I know we have a study going on right now.
Correct. All right. No more public comments. The motion,
Good morning. Jeffrey Vance, 56160 Francis Avenue. I'm here about the condemned building next to my home. Last summer, this was one of the buildings that was on the list of 9 that you accepted bids for. And according to the building department last week, it's the only one left that hasn't been taken care of. I'd like to find out what we got to do to get this thing out of here.
What was the address of that property?
The address of the property is 56150 Francis Avenue.
Right there.
Francis Avenue. Okay.
This has been an issue for our neighborhood for 20 years. My wife and I have been in communication with Commissioner Fleming for several years.
I know. I've been trying to follow up.
The weather's breaking, the summer's coming, and it's going to be the same problems again.
Is that the one that's the ex-church that's shaped like an A-frame?
It's an ex-church, and I don't know if they've actually went in and looked at it.
It ain't even my county district, but I know it.
Apparently they're afraid of a lot of asbestos or anything like that because it's a commercial building. It's the furthest thing from that. I mean, the people that built the church, the pastor built this church. It's just a regular building. It's been gutted. I mean, there's no electric, no plumbing, everything's been stolen out, the sheetrock's been ripped off. It's just it's a skeleton.
Was your name Mr. Fran?
Vance.
Vance. Okay,
Jeffrey Vance. It's right next door to me.
Okay, sir, well, you know, public comments is public comments. People can say whatever they want. We're not actually required or necessary to speak back, but we do because we want to communicate and learn.
I got you.
And I'm going to ask after the meeting, you see Marie, would you put your hand? Leave your name and phone number with Marie. And would you please check with the building department what's the status? Now, just because we may declare something, we have to, one, wait for all utilities to be disconnected. And if there's gas, power, electric, telephone, those companies don't hire extra workers to do jobs that don't generate revenue. You know it? So it's only when they have surplus crews, not installing new hookups, repairing broken lines, that they can go disassemble this. And if there's any sewage, and there's probably sewage.
Septic, yeah.
Septic, and the health department, and somebody's gotta check all that.
Right.
There's got a lot of boxes have to be checked, and then the contractor has to have the availability. So it's never a simple, clean-cut thing, you approved it, it's done. It's a process. So we're gonna ask
I got you.
Marie to check with the building department and get back to report to you and report to us in email, and, but please give your
Well,
name and number after the meeting.
That's why
okay?
I am here today, because I did talk to the building department, and they told me that that particular building was not approved.
Right.
Oh, I thought we approved that.
No, we did not.
They
It was the one
approved and
that
took
was
care of every
about
other one but that one. They said it cost too much.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
so then I talked to Marie last week, and apparently she said it's not even on the list anymore.
You're right, and they just informed me that $50,000, that's a lot of money.
Right. And I've been pushing to, just to let you know.
$50,000.
Yeah, to take it down.
The quote, the bid was to
Yeah.
take that building down.
Because of the asbestos that's in there and stuff and all that kind of stuff that needs to be done. But I'm gonna
Have
try
they
to.
actually, do you know if they've even went in and looked?
Well, I'm sure they did estimates, obviously, and
Well,
they've done asbestos investigations.
So we can follow up, because that was a year ago, actually a little bit more than
July.
a year ago, that they had gone through, and so we can take another look at that.
Yeah, it
to
was
see.
July meeting, they approved accepting the bids.
Right, to see what they would.
I'd like to see it gone too. I just kind of.
Demolition of buildings is usually a quality of life issue you find in the city limits. It's not something the county traditionally does. In the last 4 years is probably the only time we've actually been tearing down any properties, and it's been a limited number of maybe 10 to 14 a year, based on maybe spending $90,000. Because obviously, every time we do something, we need the money.
I get it.
And to spend, if we could normally tear down a small property for $7,000 to $14,000, and then this one is requiring 50, and what if there's gonna be cost overruns because of the asbestos, and then the storage of said asbestos?
Okay,
You have to pay somebody to take it.
What happens if a kid gets killed over there or something? The dry wells are collapsing.
The
septic
homeowner,
system-
the property owner's gonna be liable. You know what, there's a Good Samaritan law that you can take care of it, you can board it up, you can
Trying
paint
to
it.
take care of it.
You can-
I'm trying to get it gone.
The Good Samaritan law
This thing, the
protects you from
soffits are falling
lawsuits.
out of it, they're full of animal feces, there are
Right.
raccoons, there's possums, there's feral cats living in this. And I'm right next door to it. I can look out my kitchen window and see animal feces just hanging out of the soffits.
Yeah.
They track through my yard. I got a dog, it tracks through the yard, it comes in the house. We bought boots. We start putting boots on our dog, even take it outside. Because we don't want to track it in our house for our grandson to be crawling on.
Right.
I mean, something's got to be done. I don't know if you end up owning that property if you do this, but there's 3 lots there. Surely you could sell it and get the money back.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, but yeah.
I mean,
It's actually an odd location, 'cause that's more residential, isn't it?
Right.
it's the only commercial building in that area, and it's only for a church daycare or something like that. No other business can.
Maybe we could put that in the IEC and make that as part of some kind of railroad spur in there.
I don't care how you do it. We just need to get it out of here.
I agree, and I'm trying to push for that. Been trying to.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
If there are no more public comments, motion to recess is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, tough luck. We are recessed.